Hi everybody, it's Chris and welcome back to another video. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you to everyone who takes the time to watch these videos, to subscribe, to like and to make comments. I love the interaction, so thank you very much indeed for your support. Okay, today I'm going to focus on one particular type of record. Now, back in the late 60s, early 70s, most radio stations were fairly mainstream, and your chances of hearing anything that was particularly different from the mainstream was quite difficult. There was obviously no internet, there was no YouTube in those days, and so if you wanted to hear new music, sometimes you just had to take a punt on an album. But there was a format of an album that came out in the late 60s, early 70s that introduced you to loads of different new bands and songs by bands that you already knew, and that was the sampler. And over the years I've collected quite a few of them, so I thought I'd share with you all the samplers that I have in my collection, and there's quite a big stack, so get comfortable. Okay, the first one, I don't even know if it's a sampler, but there are quite a lot of Mercury and Sire artists on this particular record. It's the first one I ever bought in 1977, and it's new wave, so it's on Phonogram and Vertigo. As I said, there's Sire artists on here. Talking Heads are on here, the Ramones are on here, Dead Boys are on here, New York Dolls, and so on. But there's also Richard Hell, he's another Sire artist, but Skyhooks, The Damned doing New Rose, fantastic, Flaming Groovies, Runaways. So really good little compilation. I bought that back in 1977. Now in about 1979 I used to read the Sounds, and you could collect tokens and send away for an album where I think you just pretty much paid the postage. And one of the albums that I did collect was a sampler, a CBS sampler. This is the heavy metal album, although the tracks on it aren't very heavy metal, bar Exciter by Judas Priest, but it's got bands like Aerosmith and Rick Derringer, The Boys, Boston, Molly Hatchet, Journey, Ted Nugent, REO Speedwagon. So it introduced me to a few new songs from some artists and some new artists as well, so it's useful. Sounds also a couple of years before, I think in 76, 77, brought out this, Good for Nothing. This has got some really good tracks on it. Steve Gibbons is on here, for example, Golden Earring, Pace Ashton and Lord, Eric Clapton, Rainbow are on here, Jack Bruce. My favourite song by The Jam is on here as well, and that's Art School. So this was a Polydor RSO sampler from Sounds for next to nothing really. They also produced this. I'm not sure when this came out, I think about 81, 82. It's more of a compilation than a sampler, but a sampler certainly of particular Oi artists, which is pretty good. And also this a Charisma one as well, which is very limited if I'm really honest with you. The best song for me is Match of the Day by Genesis. In 1980, lots of people who are into rock probably bought this double album, Kilowatts, introduced me to lots of bands, quite a few of which were already on that CBS sample from Sounds, but we've got on here bands that at the time I didn't know much about, so Shaking Street, Trust, The Boys, Joe Perry Project, REO Speedwagon again on here, Blue Oyster Cult, Ted Nugent, a guy called Ray Gomez, who was a bit more of a fusion guy, but kind of hit the mainstream around about 1980. So it's an epic CBS rock sampler, Kilowatt. MCA brought out a rock sampler called Precious Metal, which has got a very strange track list. Some bizarre choices. So you've got a band called Axe, 2 songs by them, alongside Steppenwolf, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Point Blank, Budgie. I remember buying this, not when it came out in 77, but around about 79, 80, and it's a 10-inch sampler from Virgin called Guillotine. And this has got some really good songs. My favourite Motors song, You Beat the Hell Out of Me, is on here. Oh Bondage Up Yours, Don't Dictate by Penetration's on here. The Table are on here. So a really interesting little sampler. And also we've got a couple of samplers that came from the Stiff label, so Hits Greatest Stiff, and there is another one called Bunch of Stiffs, which I don't have, black cover. And this one as well, Akron, which is the city where lots of the bands who were signed to the American version of Stiff, or American bands signed to Stiff, came from. So that's quite a bizarre mix of stuff, but anyway, nice to have. One of the first samplers I think that came out in the late 60s was on CBS, and a goodie. It's this one, The Rock Machine Turns You On. You've got you've got the Byrds, Simon and Garfunkel, Taj Mahal, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Roy Harper, Tim Rose, Moby Grape, Spirit, The Zombies. Really good track list. Introduced me to lots of new music and some songs by the artists who I was familiar with, and as did the follow-up. Very similar set of artists, different tracks obviously, but some really good stuff. Again, great introduction to some bands, really good introduction to kind of more albums and songs from bands that you already knew. I'm not sure when this came out. This is probably in 1970-ish, I would thought, which is kind of the heyday for the sampler. This is another CBS one called Together. This has got Tom Rush, Spirit Bird, so very similar in many ways to the Rock Machine ones. We've got Johnny Winter on here, Janis Joplin, Santana, Argent, so some really good stuff on Together. And then this one as well, with I think his name's Jerry Goodman. He played for a band called Flock. He's on the cover. This has got Santana, Chicago, and also a track by Argent, so before they were kind of famous, Dance in the Smoke. Birds are on here, a folk band that are very collectible but I just can't stand, called The Trees. Al Stewart's on here, some nice blues as well, so that's a really nice little sampler, really worth having, that one. All of these are, you know, really common. I think you pick these up everywhere. And then there's this one as well, Rockbuster, which is another CBS sampler, similar artist to Fill Your Head with Rock. There's the cover, there it is there. It's got a song by Skid Row, who not the hair metal band obviously, but a band that came out of Ireland, has a very young Gary Moore on it. Skin Alley, Argent, Trees are on here again. Bob Dylan, Santana, Soft Machine, Poco. A really good mix of stuff, and a great introduction to some music that I'd never really heard before. Motown had a number of samplers. I've got the third one somewhere, the Chartbusters, which is really good. I just couldn't find it, so I had to show this one, which is the Big Wheels of Motown. A bit more of a kind of a compilation than a sampler, I guess, but a stellar track list if you like Motown. A couple of Trojan ones as well, so Red Wine, which is okay. It's not going to make me, you know, burst out and buy a load of Trojan records. This one is better, Club at Scar 67. I mean, with a fantastic set of artists on it and tracks. There's the track list in there. So some really good stuff on there. That's a really good one. And then we got a little bit of blues. So this is a sampler, a blues sampler that has Vanguard, Mercury, Fontana, and Phillips recording artists. Blues Package 69 came out in 1969. Buddy Miles is on here. Who else is on here? Charlie Musselwhite is on here. Blue Cheer, Junior Wells, Alexis Corner, but a real mix. So we've got things like Elizabeth, QB and the Blizzards are on here. Buddy Guy's on here. So yeah, quite an interesting little mix of stuff, a little blues package there. A couple of other blues albums. I think there is a volume 3 of this. I've just never seen it, so probably, you know, you pick up these in charity shops quite a lot. So the power of the World of Blues Power Volume 1 and the World of Blues Power Volume 2. There is a Volume 3. These are Decca recording artists. So we've got John Mayall, 10 Years After, are on here. Peter Green, Eric Clapton's on here. So some really good stuff. Keith Hartley, that one is probably better than that one, but really worth having if you like the blues. This is another blues one on Blue Horizon. Super Duper Blues. It's got 3 tracks from Fleetwood Mac on it, but it's also got Chicken Shack, and then some people I don't know anything about, so Johnny Shines, Sunnyland Slim, so some Gordon Smith, so some interesting unusual stuff as well. And sometimes when you play the unusual stuff, you realise why it's unusual. It's not always that great. Atlantic also started to bring out some samplers as well. So we've got these two. So this is this one is the Age of Atlantic, and this is the New Age of Atlantic. This one here was a great way of getting some really good. So I think it's 99p. This would have cost you possibly. I don't know. It's got 99 on there. I don't know if that meant it's 99p, but it's got Delaney and Bonnie with Eric Clapton, MC5. Allman Brothers, you know, this is a way of hearing those bands that probably weren't ever on the radio over here in the UK. Yes, are on here. Led Zeppelin's on here a couple of times. Vanilla Fudge, really heavy song from there. Need Love. Dr. John is on here. And then there's this one, The New Age, which has got a kind of a really kind of sought after song by Little. It was at the time kind of a mythical kind of song, mystical kind of song called Hey Hey What Can I Do, which I think was a B-side of a single possibly over in the States. But this has got Buffalo Springfield Bluebird, which is a great song, Cactus, Long Tall Sally, Yes are on here, Loudon Wainwright. So yeah, really interesting stuff. The New Age of Atlantic, good stuff. Also on Atlantic is this one. This is Soul. You've probably seen this. I see this almost every time I go to a record shop, but it's got an absolutely brilliant track list. It really has got some fabulous songs on it, and if you haven't got it and you like that kind of, or you want a little compilation, fantastic. But that's all Atlantic recording artists. Next one, we're going to Warner Brothers. This is a bit of a bizarre cover. It's quite interesting. I put it in a sleeve simply because if you put it in the shelves, it just rolls out. It's completely useless. It's called Fruity. It's a Warner Brothers Reprise sampler. It's got Alice Cooper on it. Allman Brothers, Curved Air, Rycuda, Marlowe, the Latin rock band. Bob Welsh era, Fleetwood Mac's on here. Fanny, the All-American rock band. America, Grateful Dead, Faces. So some really interesting stuff. Fascinating cover. This is I don't know, this is just something I picked up in a charity shop years ago, absolutely years ago, probably in the 90s. It was obviously something you could order from the Sunday Times. It's the Rock Revolution, and it's a bunch of Warner Brothers and Reprise artists on here. So we've got Doobie Brothers, Faces, Little Feat, Iron Butterfly, James Gang, Alice Cooper, Dr. John, Buffalo Springfield, Van Morrison, James Taylor, Tim Buckley's on here, Billy Cobham is on here, Greenslade, Electric Runes. Yes, it's got a really, really good track listing. This is a fantastic little album, this triple album, really, really good. That was from the Sunday Times magazine, and it's called The Rock Revolution. I don't know if that's easy or difficult to find. I've never seen it other than the time I picked it up, but if you looked around, it's probably there. It's a great little sampler. These are two Electras. Now, Electra samplers, I think the first one was in the 50s, a folk one, as I said earlier, but this was one that looks like a Loving Spoonful album, which is came out in, or I guess this is a 1969-ish sampler. This is called What's Shaking, but it's also got the Butterfield Blues Band as well. It's also got Tom Rush, it's also got Al Cooper, it's also got Eric Clapton. So yeah, fairly interesting kind of mix of stuff on this Electra sampler. This one is a lot better. This is called Gardens of Delight, which you may or may have not seen. I've only ever seen it once, and that's when I picked it up. I've not seen it since. Garden of Delight. Typical kind of sampler looking, all the album covers there. It's got an interesting track list. What's fascinating about this though is it doesn't include probably their biggest selling artists, who were the Doors. They're not on here for some strange reason, but what you do have is Love, you have Tim Buckley, you have Incredible String Band, you have Delaney and Bonnie, you have Lonnie Mack, blues guy, playing some stuff, Eric Clapton, the Stooges are on here, Butterfield Blues Band, Judy Collins, a real mix of stuff. Red's on here, and then some unusual bands, Rhinoceros, and I did buy their album, it's awful, but Bamboo, Zodiac, bands who probably went on to obscurity, I would think, because I've never heard of a lot of them, but that's quite interesting. And that's Electra. This is one of the famous ones. See this a lot. This is often in record shops, and if you like samplers, you probably have this one. It's an island sampler. You Can All Join In, which is a Traffic song, which is on here. A picture of lots of the island artists with Free on the front there. You can see Andy Fraser for a start there, and Paul Rogers. Jethro Tull, Spooky Tooth on here. Free, Bangor Art and Tramline. I don't know either of those two. Traffic. Meet on the Ledge by Fairport Convention, which is, you know, one of the better songs by them. I'm not a fan of folk at all. Short-lived band Nirvana, the UK version, Rainbow Chasers on here, John Martin's on here, Spencer Davis, and a brilliantly named artist called Winder K. Frog, who I think recorded under another name with Joe Cocker, but some interesting stuff. You can all join in. That's an Island sampler, and they did several of others as well. And I really like the cover of this one. This is quite a famous one. Nice Enough to Eat, with all the sort of band's names in cookies on the front. So this has got some good stuff. It's also got some awful stuff as well. So for example, it kicks off with Fairport Convention, which with a steady hand and a very sharp chisel, you can just take it off because it's the opening track. It's dreadful. It's got Better By You, Better Than Me, which is by Spooky Tooth on here, but it's covered by Judas Priest. Jethro Tull's on here, Free are on here, Bloodwind Pig, which is quite interesting. 21st Century Schizoid Man, Caught the Kings and Crim, Kings and King, get it right in a minute. So that's on here, and it's got a kind of real kind of, it's not a famous band, but an odd band, and they're called Strangely Strange but Oddly Normal by Dr. Strangely Strange, which is very strange, and you can see why it wasn't very successful. But anyway, that's a really nice sample. Nice Enough to Eat on Island. Here's another Island one, Bumpers. This was a 1969-70. Same sort of artist, obviously, because it's an Island sampler. This was the album that introduced me to the heavy version of Mott the Hoople, which I didn't realise exists. Thunderbuck Ram, fantastic tune by them. Jethro Tull's on here, and unusually it's got a reggae song as well, Going Back West by Jimmy Cliff, which was very unusual, and it kind of hinted at the direction that Island were going. Bloodwind Pig, Dave Mason's, Bronco, Traffic. Oh, so interesting, Nick Drake. I've never got him. I never understand the fascination with Nick Drake, sorry. That's for controversial. King Crimson's on here. Renaissance. Fotheringay. Oh, the sea. Just dreadful. I mean, oh, I don't know. My record taste, my collection is fairly eclectic. It doesn't extend to folk. I would remove every folk song from all of these samplers if I had sharp enough chisel. Okay, here's another one. This is LP. Little play on words there, very clever. And it had an even cleverer inner because it had a self-cleaning device in it, which fundamentally was a little kind of foam strip here that when you pulled the record out was meant to clean it. What it did is just mark it. But again, some interesting stuff on here. Same old people, really. Head, Hands and Feet, which weren't on the others. Lord Marlborough by Fairport Convention. Luckily, that's the last song on side one. Again, nice chisel, fine. We've got Quintessence, Dive Deep, which is probably the only song by Quintessence that would be, pointless on that programme. Wouldn't be pointless. What else we got? Amazing Blondell. We've got Mountain are on here. Who else? Free, Incredible String Band, Wild World by Cat Stevens. That's a good song. Bronco, and a few things I don't know. It's got Nick Drake. Interesting. Nick Drake's on here. Jimmy Cliff finds himself on it. Emerson, Lake and Palmer also on there. Knife Edge. So yeah, good little sampler again from Ireland. This I think is possibly not a UK one. It might be. I think it's German. This is London Pop News. Again, same sort of artist. Jethro Tull, Spooky Tooth, Free, Bloodwind Pig, Renaissance. Mott the Hoople, Rock and Roll Queen. One of my favourite tracks by Mott the Hoople. I absolutely adore that song. Brilliant guitar from Mick Ralphs. Nice little sampler. I think it's German. Couple on Liberty. So these two are, I think this was the first one in the late 60s, Gut Bucket, and then Son of Gut Bucket. So on the first one, we've got Captain Beefheart, again, another artist I really didn't get at all. Lightning Hopkins, Alexis Corner, Groundhogs, The Hourglass, who I think were a band that the Allmans possibly were in, pre-Allmans. Canned Heat are on here. Ainsley Dunbar's Retaliation. So some interesting songs, certainly introduced me to some new music, especially things like Ainsley Dunbar. And then this one here as well, again, similar artists, but it does have Creedence, Clearwater Revival, Johnny Winter are on here, Roy Harper, Groundhogs. So again, some stuff on there that introduces you to new music, which is always great. Harvest also jumped on this as well and brought out this one, which is probably the most famous of the samplers that they brought out. This has got a Deep Purple connection, which if you watch this channel a lot, you'll know I'm a big fan of those. So Into the Fire by Deep Purple is on here. It also has a song called Black Sheep of the Family on here, which was one of the first songs recorded by Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. On here it's recorded in the original format by Quatermass, which is quite a collectible album and features a guy called Mick Underwood, who played with Ian Gillan in the Gillan Band, and sadly passed away just a few days ago. So rest in peace, Mick. I used to love him and his drumming. So some interesting stuff on here. Edgar Broughton, a couple of people I've never heard of. Panama Limited, don't know anything about them. Pete Brown and Pip Lockto. Forest. Syd Barrett's on here. I think this is one of the first times Syd Barrett was out in the kind of main albums. Pretty Things. Roy Harper's on here. Pink Floyd. Now Embryo, the song is called, and I think that was kind of not an album track, possibly. I'm not a massive Pink Floyd aficionado. I don't know a huge amount about them, but I'm sure someone who's watching this will be able to tell me something about Embryo. Harvest also did this one as well, the Harvest Bag. Nowhere near as good. Southern Comfort, Electric Light Orchestra is on here. Climax, Chicago, Barclay James Harvest, The Move. Yeah, it's fairly average. If you see it, as long as it's probably still about that price, then pick it up. A couple on the Purple label. So there's only one that really came out, but it's in two formats. So this is the one on the Purple label, Purple People, which is all the recording artists, including Deep Purple, that found themselves on, or some of them that found themselves on the Purple label, which was Deep Purple's album. So Tony Ashton, Hard Stuff, Rupert Hine, Yvonne Elliman, Tucky Buzzard, Silverhead, a couple of songs by Deep Purple, Yvonne Elliman's on here. So yeah, interesting stuff. And then it came out on MFP, Music for Pleasure as well, called Rock Reflection. So exactly the same, but different covers. We've got one from Buddha Records. This has got some interesting stuff on it as well. Loving Spoonfield, Lemon Pipers, Shangri-La's. Bands I don't know anything about. The Tokens, the Five Stair Steps, Brooklyn Bridge, I don't know anything about them. But Melanie's on here. Edwin Hawkins, Loving Spoonful, Johnny Winter. So yeah, quite interesting. From Buddha, there's a Polydor one here called Bombers, which you may well have seen. I think this came out in the very early 70s. Taste, Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce, John Mayall, Elliot Randall. I think he was either guy who played guitar on Reeling in the Years. I think it was by Steely Dan. I think it's him. It may not be. Stone the Crows, Derek and the Dominoes on here. So not bad. Terrible cover on Decca Records. Terrible name. Wowie Zowie, but reasonably interesting track list. We've got some very early Genesis. Of course, we've got Nights in White Satin on here. Savoy Brown, John Mayall are on here. So yeah, Keith Hartley and a couple of people I don't know. So yeah, interesting stuff there. Here's one from Probe, Handle with Care. This is quite mixed, although it does feature a band called Freedom, who I knew nothing about, and they're worth kind of investigating. There's two songs from them, Frustrated Woman and Nobody, which aren't bad. This has also got the James Gang, Steppenwolf, Three Dog Night, and so on, and BB King. So that's Probe. This is a Capricorn Records one, which I've shown before when I showed some southern rock stuff. Grinder Switch are on here, doing a song called, which is, I think it's an Elmore James song, is it? I don't know. Picking the Blues, which was the theme tune for John Peel. That's on here. But it's Marshall Tucker Band. Bonnie Bramlett, Grinder Switch is the bands that you get. So Capricorn sampler, but it's worth getting just for Picking the Blues. This is a really nice one. Couple more, folks. Hang on in there. This is a really nice one. This is on Brain Records. It's called Electronical Dreams, which I haven't seen before. I picked this one up, but I have never seen it since. I've never gone looking for it particularly, but I've not seen it since. This has got Neu, Cluster, Grobschnitt, who I always think should be called Gobshite, Karl Schalzer, Harmonia. So some interesting stuff if you like the kind of krautrock thing, which, you know, I do actually. I really enjoyed that particular sampler. That's a Brain Records sampler, Electronical Dreams. And the last one is a Vertigo one. Now I don't have, there's two I don't have, a United Artists one called All Good Clean Fun, And the other one, which I really would like, which I guess is collectible, but it's on Vertigo. I think it's a Vertigo Swirl, which is called the Vertigo Annual, which has got Uriah Heep, it's got Black Sabbath, and it's got May Blitz on it as well, who are very collectible. But this is a Vertigo one, and you've probably seen this. It's called Suck It and See. Beautiful cover in that. I love a laminate cover, and it's such good condition. And it's there's the Vertigo, the spaceship label, which I really like. And this has got some really interesting stuff on it. So Black Sabbath are on here, Gentle Giant, Kraftwerk, Jade Warrior are on here, and they're very collectible on vinyl. Aphrodite's Child, Alex Harvey, Status Quo, Rod Stewart's on here, Ian Matthews, Magna Carta, Manfred Mann's Earth Band, so a really nice sampler from Vertigo. So there you go. I don't know how many there, that's best part of 50 I would think. I'm sure I'm missing some. There are probably loads more. Tell me which ones you've got, which ones you like, and I'm sure I'm going to be back sometime soon with another video. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed that. These samplers are just brilliant ways of finding out new music. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll see you soon. Cheers.